Hello, all late night coders, and welcome back to the channel. So, it's been a few weeks since I published my last video, and I've been super busy. Sorry for that. I'm doing some exciting things though, creating some online courses, and I'll share the news with you in the next couple of weeks and let you know what I've been working on. So, in this video, we are going to continue working on our Three.js adventure. And so, right now, we've created something similar to what I have on my portfolio website here. We have a 3D object that we can hover on, and I'll show you in a minute what we actually have made. But the goal in this lecture is to have a click event like this, and then we'll have some kind of particle explosion or whatever you want to call it to show some animations there, and we're gonna do that in this lecture. So before we get started, if you're new to this channel, make sure to hit the subscribe button below and don't forget to turn the notification bell on. And as I said, I will have some pretty exciting news for you guys about my online courses, and make sure to turn the notification bell on to be notified when I publish another video here. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is to go to this GitHub repo. This is the last project video that we worked on, and this is the repo for that video. I'll put a link in the description box below for you guys to access it. What we're gonna do, we're gonna either download the zip file or clone it, however you like, and then we're going to open the code in VS Code or any IDE of your choice. Once you do that, first thing to do is npm install to install all the packages. I've already done that, so once that's done, the packages are installed, we can do npm start. And again, for those of you who are new to this channel, I have a lot of videos that I've explained everything that we've done so far, and also if you want to know what this folder structure, the files are, I have a Webpack boilerplate video that I'll put a link to that also in this top right corner. You can go check that out to find out how this structure works, and you can also start from there. So for our dev server to start, as we have it in our package.json file, we're gonna do npm start here. So let's do that, npm start, and let our development environment basically set it up and start it. So our dev server is getting ready right now. It may take a little while, but soon we should see on our localhost 3000. If you go there, you'll be able to see our home page here. And again, we've worked on all these pages in previous videos. What you can do, go ahead and click on the go to ThreeJs here. That's where we've been spending most of our time working on different ThreeJs related stuff. So if you remember, we had this kind of like earth or like a sphere geometry that we have here, and then we've got stars all around it. If you like zoom in and out using your scroll bar or your mouse middle button there, you'll be able to see like how far this all goes. And then I'm gonna just zoom in more. We are using orbit controls, and that's what is giving us this option to drag around and also to zoom in and out. So right now what we have is a hover action, and this is what we did in some of the previous videos. And what we're gonna do now, we're gonna work on that click action. So let's get started. First thing I'm gonna do, we have this index.3js file under three.js folder, under canvas, under our app folder. Again, if you don't know why this is how we have structured our code, go ahead and check out my previous videos. Basically, all the JavaScript, front-end JavaScript related stuff is under app folder, and then anything regarding three.js, I have it under canvas. And then this three.js technically could be any name that you want to do. I put it three.js because that's the endpoint for my three.js page here. It could be like the endpoint or whatever you want here. The index.js file is what I have open here, and I have all my three.js stuff here. We have an entry point for our three.js stuff. If we had other pages that had three.js in them, this is where we are bringing them in, importing them. And I keep mentioning this. If you want to know more, go ahead and check out my previous videos. But one last note here, under app folder, directly under app folder, index.js is what we define this is our entry point for all our JavaScript, front-end JavaScript files, and that's where we import our other pages and everything else. So back to this index.3js here. We already have a mouse down event. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna define a click event here. So let's do it. We need to use raycastering again. So as we did with the mouse move, to see that hover effect here, we're gonna do a similar thing. We're gonna get the event.client x and y here on mouse down section, and we're gonna do raycaster with the mouse and the camera to get our intersects. And so next thing, we're gonna define this click intersect variable here, and then we're gonna use the intersect objects function of raycaster, and inside there we have our object. So we want to intersect with this object, this earth thing here, and that's what we have defined up here. If you go all the way inside our constructor, we have this object, which is our plane geometry and material that we have added before. So anything that you don't know what they are, just go ahead and check out the previous videos in the channel, and you should find out everything, figure out what everything is. So then what we're gonna do, we're gonna define this if click intersects that length is greater than 0, then we're gonna console.log our click intersect. So that what that means is that if I click on this object, I can see the object that I've clicked on. So let's save this right now at this stage that we have it, and let's go back to our localhost 3000. Right now I'm clicking outside, nothing is happening, console.log is empty, and as soon as I click here, you can see that I have my object right here. The click that I have basically detected here, the output of that, the click intersect, is what I'm console.log in here. And then what I'm going to do is to go ahead and comment out the on mouse move section. We had a intersect console.log there, this intersect here. I don't want that. As you can see, it's still there, so I'm just getting rid of that. And then the next thing I'm gonna do is back in my on mouse down, if click intersect greater than 0, what I'm trying to do is to scale that down, my object, scaling that down as we had it here. We're kind of on click, kind of scaling this down and then showing our particles. So that's the first thing I'm gonna do. And for that, we are again going to use GSAP because that's amazing. GSAP is great. So what I'm gonna have here is a timeline 2, and then what I'm gonna manipulate is the object scale, and this is how you can do it. The scale of the object will have 3 x, y, and z parameters there, and we're going to first on click scale it up. Actually, I click on it, it's gonna double up twice, basically double it in size, and then let's check it out how that looks right now. So let's go back to localhost 3000 here, and I'm gonna zoom out a little bit so you can see the doubling. So I have here, then click, I'm still holding. If I let go, it's still gonna remain that size because we haven't defined any mouse up event. So this right now is double the size that we had it, and we can actually go ahead and comment out the mouse move event so we can see stuff better here. So I'm commenting out what we have for hover or mouse move event. So let's check it out again. Remember, we also have these dots over here, not dots, the particles from the geometry outer faces. So that's what we added also in the previous video over here. We added this sphere particles. That's what we have here. Right now I have deactivated the hover effect, so you don't see that hover effect. If I click on it, you see it's gonna double up in size, and if we go inside, we still kind of like zooming in, we still see those particles here. And by the way, right now if we go inside this sphere, we don't see that anymore, and that's because we don't have a side parameter here for the shader material that we have. We can add that. If we do 3 double side, then we should be able to see the other side of the object as well, and that's the inside. Basically, if I zoom in now, you can see I have the inside view as well. I'm gonna click on it so it doubles in size, and now if I go inside, I can see that. So this again depends on your use case. If you want to enable that, go ahead and do that. If not, just leave it as it was before this. So the next thing we're gonna do when we click on this object, we want to define a variable that tells us, hey, I just clicked on it, and then on mouse up, which is letting go of our click, and there we are going to see if like I had clicked on this object actually, not somewhere else. So once I click on this object, if intersect is greater than 0 the length, then we're gonna change that click variable to true, and I'll show you again. So up here in our constructor, we're gonna define that variable. So I'm gonna do this clicked false, and then if I click and the click has intersected with my object, I'm going to make that true. And once that's true, I want to add a mouse up event here. If this clicked, which means if it's true, I'm going to scale it back to 0 when I let go. Mouse up is let go, and again, go check out previous videos inside my index.js. Right under app folder, I have defined all my event listeners. So mouse up here, is like the mouse up event listener, mouse leave, and touch and touch cancel. So it will also include my touch events that I touch on it and let go. So back to this index.js for our three.js stuff. What we just did was to scale our object down similarly to what we did here to 0 this time, X, Y, and Z, and then we set the click to false. So it's now gonna be false after we let go. And so let's do that, save this, and then let's go back here. So let's zoom out a little bit. I'm gonna click on it and I'm not gonna let go. I click, it's still twice as big, and then now I'm about to let go and it's gonna go to 0. Okay, so that's exactly what we want to see. So again, refresh this guy here. I am going to click, no matter how long you hold it, it's gonna be there. And then let go, and that's gonna scale down to 0. It's not there anymore. So if I click on it, it's not there anymore. The next thing we're gonna do, let's see. I am going to start working on the particles, and I'm gonna change the basically stars here, make changes to that part of the code. Right now these create stars is taking care of all these stars here, and we did that in the previous lecture. Go check that previous video, go check that out. And here we have 10,000 particles, so I'm gonna actually define a variable because we're gonna reuse this. I'm giving it a 100,000. I'm increasing the number of particles, and then of course I'm gonna replace that 10,000 here. And we have right now we're creating X, Y, and Z's using this 3math-utils. So the rand float spread basically means give me some random variables between -1,000 and +1,000. So as you can see in the description here, once you hover on it, random float from negative range over 2 to range over 2. So this is gonna be -1,000 to 1,000. I have my sphere geometry right now is just a 1 by 1, like not 1 by 1. The radius is 1. So I'm gonna decrease this so it's more concentrated towards my radius, so towards my sphere geometry. So I'm gonna change this to 10 and just add this comment so we know what this is creating between -5 and 5 random float there. So let's save this. And we can actually add our axis helper also. So I'm gonna add my axis helper here. This is another ThreeJs property. So let's add that so that I can see exactly everything goes from -5 to 5 on X, Y, and Z. So let's check it out here. Alrighty, so I'm here. I should probably also zoom out a little bit where my original camera is. So let's see here. I have it as 0, 0, and 4. What I'm gonna do is change this to 10 so that it's a little bit further away from my sphere geometry. And let's see now. There we go. That's there. If I zoom out a little more, you can see my X, the red axis, my Z, blue axis, and Y, my green axis here. Everything is from 5 to -5. I already clicked on that, but if we see that whole thing again, my click event still works. So I'm clicking and letting go. And feel free to get rid of these particles on the sphere. You can do that by just basically commenting out this create sphere particles. I'm just leaving it there so that we have some kind of reference there. And So this is the part about our particles, just focusing them around my element here. And then we have also our click event on my sphere object here. And now we're gonna work on adding the animation and related stuff for these particles. So currently we have this points material for our stars here. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna actually change it to shader material, similar to what we have for our sphere here, up here, our planet geometry, and then we have this material there. All I have is basically it's two uniforms for two different colors. Right now we have green everywhere, so it's gonna be a mix of two colors, similar to the um, sphere element that we have here. And I can show you again that right here we have that two mix of colors, and we did this in one of the previous videos, so make sure go check that out. I also put a link up here. So we have a vertex shader and fragment shader here. We haven't defined these files yet, so what I'm gonna do now, we're gonna go and bring these two files here, particle vertex and particle fragment, and I've already created them here. And these are basically very similar to what we had for vertex and fragment. I've just like copied basic code from them over here. And so for the particles vertex, I just have my position, and then everything else that I've explained in the original shaders video that I published. So also again, I'll put a link to that on top right corner of this video right now. And then for the fragment, we are using what we did for the sphere here. We're using the mix function to mix two colors with the depth that we have defined here as the x of the v position that we have sent over from our vertex GLSL file. So very similar to what we have done before. I'm gonna save it here, and let's check out how our particles are gonna look like. So here is I have the mix function here, and the depth is right now based on the value of position x, and that position value is coming from the here we have these vertices, and then we had the rand float spread between -5 and +5. We can do a better job with the depth here. Feel free to play with this. I'm gonna do a so since it's between -5 and +5, as we have seen here, I'm going to add 5 to it, so it's gonna be between 0 and 10, and then divide it by 10, so it's between 0 and 1, which is a good value there. So let's do that again. Play with this number however you want it, and we can see a better transition between the two color here. Right now we have the green and purplish as we had for the sphere geometry as well. As for the size of the particles, we can actually access that and change that in our particles vertex file, and that's easy using gl underscore point size here. Just as you can see the spelling here, I'm gonna set them at like 5 units, and then you'll see here that they're gonna be bigger, and so it looks like you see like we have bigger size particles. You can zoom in and see that change. And again, this is something you can play with. You can even divide by the position Z or something like that to make them a little smaller, or make the size relative to their position. So that's what I'm doing here. Again, play with this number as well. And now we should see like smaller and different sizes as we have different distance from that center over there. So you can see that here. The next thing I'm gonna do a little bit of performance optimization, so to say, for sure, in this shader material with the points here. I'm gonna add the transparent true in case like you have any alpha or things that you want to play with there with, and then the depth test and depth right kind of affects the positioning placement of these particles relative to each other. So I'm setting them as false here. Again, this is just for a little bit more performance boost. And finally, I'm gonna add this blending effect. These none of them might be really visible like with naked eyes, and definitely not in my eyes, but again, it depends on the screen resolution and all those things, and maybe there are definitely some performance related improvements there, but like I say, might not be visibly kind of like obvious there. So we have these here, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make these guys move a little bit, these particles, and we've done this before. We're gonna do a U time here in our uniforms, and I'm gonna change the U time in my update function here. As you saw in like the previous videos, we are technically like rotating the sky here, so you can see the change in color, and you can see it is actually rotating there. And so that's what we did with the elapsed time using the three.js clock. And I'm doing the same here for my stars material, uniforms, U time. I'm changing the value of that as the time changes. So we're gonna see all these guys, well, not yet, because we need to receive that U time in our particles vertex here, in our vertex file. So I'm gonna receive that here. It's gonna be a float U time, and then I'm gonna do some sine and cosine here to manipulate to change that position value here. And since that's what's being assigned later on for the position, this is gonna make the effect that we want to see there. So let's check it out real quick. And you can see all of these particles are moving with each other, and that's what we've done so far. We can make it go faster since we're gonna change all the U times here. We can define a variable, a float called time, and then assign that time to our position parameters x, y, and z, and then it's gonna like go faster now. We should see that here, kind of like maybe wider and faster. So that's that. And then what we're gonna do, since we have all of them moving at the same rate, and there is not kind of like randomness here, I want to add some randomness. So each particle will be moving in more random pattern than like the whole thing moving all together, like that sine or cosine effect there is for all of them all together. So where I define my vertices here, I'm also going to define a float 32 array. So this is gonna be also based on my number of particles, and I'm gonna have um three of the random numbers for one particle. So similar to what we had for the vertices, where three of them would make one vertex. So x, y, and z for that vertex. I'm gonna do a similar thing. This time I'm gonna use the set method here, and that's another JavaScript thing. You can take a look. I'll share this link with you. And basically it just copies the value into the array starting at the index that you define there, and our index is going to increase by 3 because we have 3 random variables for each particle. And so what I'm doing here is just a random number between basically -1 to 1. So because the random is going to be between 0 and 1, multiply by 2, it's going to be between 0 and 2, and then -1, it's going to be between -1 and +1. And then similar to this position, I'm going to this time pass another attribute to my geometry here. Oops. And I can do that using this again set attribute here. I'm gonna call it a random, and this is gonna be similarly a buffer attribute. And again here I'm gonna have 3 of these random variables for one particle, so x, y, and z for that particle. And I can receive that basically here, and we know how to do that. We're gonna do an attribute. It's vec3 as we see here, and then we are going to multiply this time by those random variables x, y, and z for the a random. So let's save it all. And let's go back to localhost 3000. What you'll see now is that each particle has its own path kind of thing. So if you zoom out, you can see this can be like, I don't know, bees, bugs, or something like that. So you can see, if you zoom in, you can see each of them have like a separate path. And then another thing we want to do is to, now when we click on this, that's gonna like scale down our sphere, as you just saw, scaled down to 0, and that's what we did. We want the rest kind of also like maybe scale up and scale down. We play with that. So what I'm gonna do here is to define a U scale here with a value of 1 originally, and then my U scale is going to be changed when I click on my sphere. So here in my timeline, I'm gonna add another U scale. I'm gonna add another 2 gsap2 here. This time it's gonna work on that U scale that we just defined. On a click, it's gonna set it to 0, and then maybe when we let go of the click, we set them back to 1. So let's do that. We need to bring that U scale also here using uniform, and then all I want to do is to multiply the vec3 that I had with this float. You can multiply vec3 by float. It will be applied basically to each of the x, y, and z here. So save this one and save this one. So what we just did was on mouse down, that means when I click and hold, as long as I hold that, it's gonna be 0, and then once I let go, it's gonna scale back up to 1. So let's check that out over here. Let's do it. So let's zoom out a little bit and then rotate it. So I'm going to click and hold. You see all the particles should scale down to 0. There you go. And as I let go, my sphere scaled down to 0 and the particle is back up to 1. And that's what exactly we have defined here. So we can see this effect a little bit better if I add like some duration to the scaling down to 0 for the particle. If this is a GSAP thing, so we can add duration there. And then as I click and hold it, you can see like these guys lower, they'll go down, and the scale up is still the duration is default. So that's one thing. I can set it back just to what by default it was, and maybe make some changes. I'm gonna change the U scale to 0 originally, so I want the explosion effect like what we had here in my portfolio website. Originally there are no particles, so I set the scale to 0. And then what I can do, I can get rid of the mouse down, like the hold time when we scale them down to 0 here. Oops, let's see. Like right now here I have these the value on the mouse click, mouse down would go down to 0 as we just saw. We can get rid of that, and then once we release it, it's gonna just scale up the particles. And again, the particles are starting this time from U scale up 0, so we originally don't see them. We can get rid of our axis helper, and maybe we can bring back our mouse move here. So also, yeah, we can get rid of the sphere particles, and that's the particles that like these guys here that just we added before. We can get rid of them. And then lastly, as I said, on mouse move here, I'm gonna bring back the hover effect that we had. So let's save this and go back here in my localhost 3000. So originally they're not there. U scale was 0. Now I'm hovering. I do see the hover effect. I click and hold. The scaling up for the sphere is there twice, and when I let go, this should scale down to 0 and my particles should like scale up. And I let go, and there you go. So this is the effect. Right now orbit control is there, so you can zoom in and out and drag. We can make some other changes. I'm getting rid of the orbit control here, so right here in my constructor I have the controls with orbit control here, so I'm going to comment that out. In my update also I'm going to comment out the controls update because I don't have them anymore. And then finally I can comment out this orbit controls, and we can fix our camera position as well so we can see stuff better. So I'm gonna move it closer to the center 5 here, and that should be all. So similar to what we had here. And right now in my portfolio I have this effect of 3 2 1, and then like the scroll happens. But what I'm trying to show you here is just like to the for you guys to be able to recreate that kind of like click effect. Right now if I click anywhere else, nothing happens. I've disabled orbit control, so I can't drag or zoom in and out. And then a hover works. I click and hold, double size, and let go, and there you go, that effect that we saw. And the movement of the particles, as we can see here, the random movement is there as well. So again, feel free to play with the numbers for like the size, these random, the positioning. You can maybe like play more with these sine and cosine. You can add something more complicated. That's dependent on use scale as well, and also for the fragment part, which controls our colors. Don't forget to do that as well. So this is all I had for you guys in this lecture. I'll put some links to some articles or things that I didn't really discuss much in this video, but feel free to take a look in the description box below. Again, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure to do so, and then turn the notification bell on. I will be putting more videos online more regularly, and I'll also let you know about my online courses that I'm working on. So thanks a lot, everyone, and I'll see you guys soon.